You are listening to Demystifying Organizations. In partnership with McGraw-Hill Education, I'm your host, Jeff Shatton. My guest today is Arun Arora. He's a partner at McKinsey with over 25 years of experience managing operations for U.S.-based and multinational companies. He has extensive experience in all environments, including digital, retail, and omnichannel. Arun specializes in helping clients transform their business and overall customer experience by harnessing the power of technology. We discuss his new book, Fast Times: How Digital Winners Set Direction, Learn, and Adapt. I'd like to welcome Arun to the podcast. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So what's the main thesis, just from a bird's eye view of Fast Times?
I mean, I think if you're a company that has embarked on a digital transformation or really digital acceleration, if you already have a digital business, and you need inspiration of what could it be, because it's not going quickly enough, you'd like it to go faster and drive more impact. The idea of, we believe to win in this world, you have to be fast, but you have to be first. And to be first, you also have to be fast. And if you want to be fast, you have to be quite deliberate and smart about how you go about this. So a core tenet, and it sounds counterintuitive, is we go fast, you have to actually go slow, in the sense of, are you doing the things in the sequencing with the right capabilities to unlock the digital value that you had an ambition for? And it may seem even common sense by saying that, but the reality is most companies go down a path of building a digital product, a digital business, without stepping back and saying, what capabilities do we need to have? Do we have the right talent? Do we have the right talent model? Do we have the right IT platform? Do we have the right IT way of working, i.e. are we working agile versus waterfall? This idea of being very deliberate upfront, being ruthless in your prioritization and driving it, having the right capabilities. The premise of the book is really about how to be first, because if you're first, you win. If you're a fast follower now, in a digital revenue competitive landscape, there is no number two that has any real value. So it is a very different premise of that there is no fast follower safe harbor strategy.
So it makes me think of a now famous Silicon Valley statement, I guess, started by Facebook, to move fast and break things. So is the idea to move fast and break things, or is there more a deliberate process?
Yeah, it's to move. It's to learn fast. Not so much to move fast, but it's to learn. To learn, a central tenet is breaking or failing. Probably I'll use the word failing. The idea of trying things that haven't been tried before to engage customers or drive revenue or find new segments. The idea of creating an environment that's safe to fail means you can only learn if you're failing. If you're creating an environment that allows for failing, your organization has the opportunity to learn. If it has the opportunity to learn, then have you created the opportunity from the scale those learnings up? If you have done all that, you should be seeing impact that's pretty material. But yet, most of at least in prior to McKinsey life and my client work, I have a client who, if you didn't hit your target, there must be something wrong with the business leader or the business team. So failing was never an option. But this is a client that was 50 to 60% behind in their targets every year in the first few months of every year. So effectively, the whole organization's failing, and yet nothing's changing.
And so what did you do?
Yeah. So in 3 months, by starting with just 10 people out of a 40-some thousand person organization, showing them that here's how, in 2-week sprints, you work agilely, you have different roles, we help them prioritize things they would do over those 2 weeks very differently based on impact, not based on whatever logic we used prior, and then let them work and help them show how to reinforce the agile model as one example. After 2 weeks, they had some very small success, but frankly, they had some reasonable failures. How then to apply that learning to the next prioritization? They had success, less failure. 2 weeks later, they had a lot more success. By the end of 8 weeks, you could actually see how the culture had changed amongst the 10 of them. You could see how they were much more engaged, reinvigorated in their jobs after the average tenure was 17 years. So that's all fine and good. But then when you scale it up to 120 people across 12 pods, you had impact that was material enough that the CFO noticed. There's 120 people out of 40,000. This is a company that does 1% to 2% growth rate. 6 months later, they were growing by 4%. They literally were the leader in their industry after 6 months.
So, and you attribute this to a change in perspective on failure, right? So you're suggesting that for most companies, we shun away from failure. It's kind of shamed, and so it changes a risk orientation. Is that what you're suggesting, or something else?
I would say failure or learning. So failure being very very much compatible with learning should be is only but one part. Like, do you have the right talent? Do they have the right capabilities? What technology do you have? Your operating model. Your operating model is waterfall, where you spend 12 months building something and then test it to see if it works. It's very different than doing things in 2-week increments. Have you stepped back and how do you prioritize the work? Is the work based on impact or based on political power? And the implications of all these things, it's a complete operating, holistic view. This idea of stepping back and going slow to go fast. It's this idea at the beginning, making sure that, have you sequenced the work, have you sequenced the people, have you sequenced the talent? So it's far more, more complicated than just failure. But failure and learning is definitely, in culture are certainly a key portion of it. But not
you have a chart in the book that lays out what fast looks like. And from my mind, it's somewhat insane. Like, in the chart, you have it that product launches every 2 weeks. A new hire can happen in 3 weeks. 24 different marketing campaigns per day. Who can work at a company that's running around like with its chicken with its head cut off like that? And how do you ever work at that speed and still have a coherent strategy?
Yes. I'll stop and say that. Actually, I think when you look at a digital native like an Amazon, and you're a category leader in Amazon, you're not doing 24 campaigns. You're doing a lot more than that, like an order of magnitude more than that. So the reality
of course, Apple, of course, Amazon and Google. But I mean, for I got it for them. It's going to be even more. But for most companies, and I'm just going to assume that this book is not exclusively written for Amazon.
Yeah. So totally. No. So what the way I was trying to say though is, the progress of a digital native is not out of reach of a company who really doesn't work that way today. So the idea of doing one campaign every 12 weeks or one client of mine every 6 months, so 2 campaigns a year, to doing 24 campaigns a day, it's not so much 24 campaigns times the normal level of work to create one campaign. You're what's called A/B testing. You're learning from trying some variables. So it could be the imagery in the campaign for one test. So that could be multiple different tests because you change the imagery. It could be the tagline. So you're not creating fully 24 campaigns. You're changing 24 variables within one broad campaign.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
And so the idea of testing 24 variants and seeing which responds in real time better, so you can put more of your finite marketing dollars behind the one that really works, or the 2 or 3 that really works, is so much more engaging, because now you've taken your brain power to say, what are the 24 tests we should do? Which one worked best as you monitor the performance in real time? Turn the ones off that aren't working, save that budget for the ones that are, and at the end of the day, you've made your business more successful, and you've seen your progress in the course of a single day, versus waiting for 6 months to hope it works. So just imagine that.
Because digitally, you're able to do things iteratively. So you can you can practice one thing. I mean, so for a company that's producing a hardware product, or we could imagine someone who's manufacturing a prosthetic limbs. I mean, they can't do. It's still gonna be more traditional, where they're pumping out one every couple months.
That's
but
right.
But it's entirely digital.
Yeah. And you can imagine, like, in a prior world, and again, you're absolutely right, things about digital as a form of communication and engagement, but that's it for marketing. But there are other parts of the functional engagement with customers that are beyond just digital marketing. So, for example, how you interact with customers. If you have a call center, you can use chat, You can use AI in chat. How can you use human capacity where it's best needed, where it's for the most complex problems, but leverage technology to provide as much reduced cost, but scale your ability to engage with more customers and ultimately make it more personalized. So the idea it doesn't have to be just on marketing. It could be on call centers and many different parts of how a digital business engages with the customer now. That a lot of it has to do with when do you deploy these tactics and technology to allow you to actually ultimately learn and scale.
You mentioned artificial intelligence, and this pops up several points in the book. I just want to see what your perspective is. Every company at this point is claiming that they're in artificial intelligence. And when you dig down, they're really just using regression or basic statistics and then calling it artificial intelligence. How do you think of that kind of trend of kind of the romanticization of artificial intelligence versus actually the use of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. I think many clients still, the idea of AI and what AI is and people's understanding of where to deploy it, I think in many people's cases, it's still very nascent. But let me now share how, when you go from nascent to reasonably mature, like the type of aha or insight that you walk away with, the impact that's incredible.
Like start with the nascent example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, regression. So I have a client who's started with like basic insight driven from using for single variable regression all the way to multivariate regression. But that isn't AI. That's just confirming a hypothesis. But when you have a hypothesis and saying, look, I have a couple million customers, I now have a sense that I have more than just 10 segments of customers. How can I engage them when they're calling into my call centers and my call center agents have a single script? That means you really only have a segment of one, but in reality, you might have, in this case, several hundred segments of customers. That's neither personalized nor specific, and certainly depending on what journey they're coming on, you really don't know how to engage them. So training an AI bot to understand what are the segments, what are the communication nuances between one segment that is maybe looking to, leave as a customer, another that's looking to join, or another that's looking to upgrade. These are very different engagements. And whether you're single, married, kids, these are also other permutations. So getting several hundred segments for an AI bot to be trained based on the insight from the regression that, you do have many segments, and then actually deploying it and seeing how that in real life feedback, is it helpful, not helpful, where should it be more helpful, and keep continually retraining it. The client went from Excel-based tools to an AI bot with hundreds of segments, now having an attrition rate that's at 1/4 of what it used to be, and more importantly, NPS that's 4 points up after having deployed the AI bot. But the real economic impact, if that's not enough, is the fact that the call center calls have fallen off roughly 20%. This is
definitely not based on my phone. My phone is blowing up in the last 6 months with call center spam.
Well, let's just say
hopefully
your provider. Yeah, I'll be hopeful and say maybe your provider will embrace other tactics of more prolific use of AI. But this one company, the impact has been hundreds of millions, but happier customers because the bot knows now how to engage differently over hundreds of seconds. That's incredible. All starting with Excel.
So we've seen that interest rates have been low for the last 10 years, and there's been just a flurry of activity really in all markets because assets have been pushed up in every direction. And you go through the question of make versus buy, and a lot of companies end up buying other tech firms or tech startups instead of trying to make things in-house. And so you start, and there's just been a lot of activity in the mergers and acquisition space because of that. How do you avoid overpaying for acquisitions, and how do they decide what is an appropriate price to pay for technology, especially given how high all asset prices right now are?
Well, I appreciate the question on acquisitions. I watch this sadly from the sidelines because I see all the M&A activity that goes on, but I can't really give much counsel on the M&A piece of it because I candidly don't get involved much in my work. Because the work I do is and also the work that I lead in Europe is specifically how to help companies if they have a digital business, how to accelerate it, and if they don't, how to help them build it. but also then accelerate. And since most of my clients are then going very organically, not most, all of them in my case, the implication of that is that M&A is not something that we discuss as a tactic or strategy on how to accelerate their business, because we're doing it with their teams, not looking at teams to acquire.
Interesting. So given all that, I mean, so one of the things that you're constantly meeting with people about is trying to understand what's going to happen on the innovation curve, which involves prediction. And how do you go about knowing what the world is going to look like even 3 and 5 years out, given the rapid pace of change?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's 80% of my. I don't know, 80 is the right number. Let me not try to be too specific about that. A large portion of my time is spent helping clients with their, 1 to 2 year out what needs to happen, and executing, rigorously against it, and with a simple goal of making the organizations better and more impact for the investments they make. That's the majority of the work. I have a handful of clients to think about, okay, after this phase of work, how and what should we do to prepare for the next one, and there's even fewer that go the one after that. And whether that's their technology platform as they're thinking about customer engagement, to me that alone is actually very insightful. There's very few companies who think 3 to 5 years out. Very.
It's just not possible.
It's well, in the span of the day, there's very, very. I mean, if you're focused on the activities of the next 12 months or 18 to 20, the reality is they also probably are constrained on resources. So even though they may want to, it's really hard, if not practically not possible, to work against the 3 or 5 year horizon.
All right. So then dialing the calendar back, how do you project out 1 to 2 years?
Yeah. So the consistent theme across most companies when they try to embark on a digital revenue acceleration is just a digital business acceleration. It's practically, how do you find the talent? Because if you know you need more and higher quality with greater capability, the talent is not getting any easier by any means. And the reality is that you already have talent in your organization. You have to build capabilities in them, and in parallel with an aspiration to finding them externally. You need to marry those two sets of populations very, deliberately and nurture them. But then, meanwhile, all that, you should revisit your agile operating model, if you're agile or not, or your waterfall. They step back from all that and say, okay, now we're deliberately building capabilities in our teams of existing employees. For every client I work with, a large portion of what I do, other than actually drive the team together with them, is help them build capabilities in the existing team, because that's the team you already have. If you wait for the team might come or might not, nothing will happen. I've had, unfortunately, clients that have waited months and years with the hope of actually executing a new talent acquisition strategy for a digital business. And then, we started dialogue together and realizing that you can't, it's not going to get any easier to hiring them. So let's start working with what we have, and let's build their capabilities and make them good, if not great, so that it's really, you go to the dance with the one you brought. You have your team. Let's make everyone better. And then
and this is just because it's just too hard in the current market conditions to hire talent.
It's not that it's too hard. It's always going to be this hard, and it's only going to get worse. So you can't expect that you're going to be able to build a full team externally. And if you're in a less desirable geography or your comp bands are hard, this becomes very difficult. So you have to harness what you already have while you drive impact, create your own story about your own transformation. Start demonstrating you can drive real value to the customer. That'll create a story to get people excited. But without the story and without the deliberate starting, you can't expect you're going to be able to hire it all externally. So I'm just saying that's in the near term, the 12, 18 months, or 24 months, in addition to helping drive the revenue acceleration or digital business creation. In parallel, building capabilities in the teams, helping the culture change that needs to come with it, and maybe revisiting the operating model, sort of all go hand in hand.
How do you retain? I mean, how do you retain talent, given how the 40 years of working for GM is gone, and now we're on for many positions, especially somebody who's very talented, on an 18, 24-month cycle. So how do companies keep people around?
Yeah, I think, when I get to watch both in my prior career as an executive, but also in my client work now. The idea of when people have the experience of learning and applying their intelligence and their time and their energy to a problem that they see that they are able to drive impact on, they get very, very reinvigorated. And if you build capabilities and you demonstrate to them that you will invest and help them develop, some of the best stories on reducing attrition or increasing retention is just by enabling person to succeed and learn and make it safe with good governance processes to fail. That alone could do wonders in this. So you think of all those organizations that have given the very structured military style command and control. There's not any opportunity to discuss the word how to learn from failure. That phrase is not a rational phrase in that structure. But with different structure, with a different way of working, different management style, you can reinvigorate people to be very engaged and drive impact, but also want to say.
Do you have any perspective on in terms of retention between the mix between salary and bonus, and whether companies you see them heading more towards higher variable pay with bonus, or like the Netflix model, which would be just pay people really high salaries and continue to keep them at the top of the band, the salary bracket?
I think comp is, there's an old study in the 60s that people notice their compensation increases for 2 paychecks if they're not happy. And I think it's easy to make this a comp conversation, but if that's the only conversation, the work environment is not invigorating, you're not learning, you don't enjoy it, you'll forget about the money quickly.
Of course.
And so to me,
we think of money as being, sorry to interrupt, we think of money as being the potential of acting as a dissatisfier, but it can never be a satisfier. And you can, if you feel like you're paid in an unjust manner, or that you're paid not what you're worth, you can be very upset. The addition, throwing extra money, never makes anybody happier.
Yeah, as long as there's many famous studies about how much money does it take to make someone happy. It's surprising how at some point how diminishing it is quickly, and it's the other stuff that matters. So to make this about comp is, I'm sure comp is important. I don't want to diminish the role of it, but it is by no means the only matter. And I have numerous clients who do not pay at the top of the band, but they have created an amazing cultures. I have one client, a telco that is not a top employer in its category, but for digital, it is highly sought after now. After 3 years, deliberately working to share their stories of impact, share how much they've changed from waterfall to agile, how they empower teams to learn and fail. And it's not a brand that you would associate this, but yet its digital team is 100% associated with this. They're building.
And so what are they doing culture-wise?
Yeah, so they have like a demo day as part of the agile ceremonies where they demonstrate to the business leaders what it is that they're building and why. They have a postmortem, what didn't work and why. They, after every 2-week sprint, they have a reflection similar to a postmortem that goes, what did work, what didn't work, and what do we do, and how will we prioritize different? And yet it is controlled. It's self-controlled to the 10 people who worked in the squad. Those 10 people control the outcome because they know their objective is to go from X to Y in some variable, drive more blank. But that one experiment they tried didn't work. So how will they take the insights and apply it to the next one? The idea that 10 people get to collaboratively work, reprioritize based on the learnings, and then try something different. That itself is just a very fresh, different way of working that people feel very invested in.
Turning to a different topic, you write that you're skeptical about outsourcing IT to third-party companies. Showing that a lot of companies do outsource all of their IT, sometimes in the United States, oftentimes overseas. Why are you skeptical about that?
Yeah, if you have an aspiration to be a digital leader, or in our research, you're not first. The first captures almost all the value. The second one onwards, the fast follower, doesn't work anymore. If you're not number one, over time digitally, you will die. And the implications of that, if you don't have a talent strategy that allows your talent to be in-house, you and your competitors, if they have a similar strategy, will likely go to the similar parties to outsource.
Right.
The similar parties haven't done. You're basically outsourcing them your critical success to a third party, and yet the only party in the end who will be able to manage, steer it, drive, learn and fail is you. And so now you have to apply all these things to a third party in the hope that the first party benefits. That's not just complicated. That is high risk, and it hasn't been shown to actually prove that it works.
So do you buy into the idea that moving forward, and maybe even today, that pretty much every corporation is eventually going to become a technology company? Because if that's kind of where we're heading, then you can't outsource IT, whereas you may have been able to in the 80s when it was not such a central function.
I mean, I think I understand why some people may have done it for cost reasons, but if it's really to drive your digital business, and you have maybe more than just digital business, an offline business too, the reality is that if they're both on common pieces of technology, etc., either one will slow the other one down, or you have to own it all yourself. You have to make the investment of insourcing your people, and then by insourcing it and providing the right, governance, not just culture is an output of a lot of behavior, but the right setup, the right operational model, the right management structure. It's a very different to insource it and provide it than outsource it and manage a vendor. So if I look at either my telco client or some of my banks that I serve,
mm-hmm.
or even my consumer retail client, those that have insourced it, given it the freedom to work deliberately on specific goals, but the flexibility of how they get there, so that they're then allowed to learn and fail, that they're working on new technology that the client didn't have prior, integrating people from the outside with the inside, and then making it, give it a good push. The reality is those have a much greater probability of succeeding. In the 5 cases I can think of right now that I'm helping, their biggest challenges isn't people and engagement and insourcing now. Their biggest engagement is their ambition big enough? And that's Ken, when we start with that as ambition. Most clients' ambition should be much, much bigger for what's possible.
And how do you push them to envision what's possible?
Well, I mean, the good news is, in the work I do here at the firm, and colleagues like myself, we, as we step back and look at what is possible, what is best in class, what is the gap a client may have to that best in class. My banking client, or frankly the telco, were all low single digit growth, but after 9 months of really this holistic change between insourcing, between IT technology change, people, how they work, etc., they've grown their digital business 5x revenue in 9 months. That isn't 5%, that's 500%.
Yeah.
And the implications of that is that people may say, oh, no, it's a one-off. Actually, no, that's not true either. And so the fact that this is repeatable across different industries and different clients who are prior either low growth or even negative growth, the biggest challenge in all this isn't any one of the pieces of the holistic approach, it's the ambition. If they have an ambition that is both achievable but oversized compared to what it was prior, mapping all these things to that and then enabling it is a very different experience than the low ambition client. It's just very different.
Yeah, it was one of the things you talked about, right? I mean, if you step into a lot of companies, you have somebody who's been there for 15 years. And we actually, neurologically, develop grooves in our brains when you do the same thing over and over and over. And the same way that you think of how mindlessly you just drive to work, how mindlessly you do the dishes. And companies end up that way, where you've just all kind of done things the same way, and you end up in a pattern of of repetition. Is that what you're trying to break it, but just in a digital manner?
That's effective. I mean, certainly effectively part of it. The idea of if this hasn't been done here that way, we've never done things like that. We've never achieved those numbers. I mean, these are not phrases I'm not used to when I'm spending time with clients for the first time. And when you show clients what's possible, and our brains as humans are wired that when I say we got impact in 9 months, it may be interpreted that we got 5x revenue growth at the end of 9 months. So that it started then. No, it's happening a little bit along every part of the way.
Sure.
And that accumulated into 5x at the end of 9 months. And the implication of that is that, well, wait, you started getting revenue growth in month 2? Well, we've never seen anything like that. At one client, we got 1% revenue growth in 6 days. 6 days for a company that's, I don't know, 70,000 employees.
Wow.
3 to 5% growth rate. And it's all through how they were spending their money driving traffic for digital. And they just said they could do it differently. They had never done it differently because it had been outsourced to an agency that, may not have been very good. Just by being very deliberate, looking at what they were doing, reprioritizing, unlock was material to them. And we were just getting started. And what I love about that, the best advocates are the people who said it couldn't be done. Because they have now lived through it, they've learned from it, and they've applied it.
So I just have a kind of closing question. I want to be respectful of your time. And I have a flight to catch. What's been the the highlight and maybe the biggest challenge of being a partner at McKinsey?
To me, it's the highlight is that this is a very different chapter in my life compared to my technology leadership that I was at my other companies, and including the idea of now helping clients without actually being responsible for the P&L, the investor relations, like all the responsibilities come as an executive. But the flip side is that I get to help clients that to me are like once in a lifetime. I get to personally throw all my expertise into making individuals and their relations successful, and do that across Europe, which I just love. So for me, it's such a privilege to spend time with my clients and work at McKinsey. And this is the best thing I've ever done.
And the biggest challenge, or the downside?
My kids would say is I may miss up there too.
Okay. yeah, sure. The work-life balance.
But in so much as that it's a very honest answer. The balance. The reality is that I am, as a person, I am very happy in my professional choice, such that my family is very conscious of it. And I think that is a really important thing for me as an individual, that my family knows I'm happy. And they're not happy that, I travel probably more than I'd like, et cetera, but I do it because I enjoy my role, and my family's happy that I do that. And so I think that, to me, there's a trade-off in all those things, but the outcome is great.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me at jeffshatten1@gmail.com. You can tweet me at jeffshatten. If you like this podcast, press the subscribe button and make sure to rate it on iTunes so that other people can find it.